Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Movies Are My Life, the show where we get a little bit serious, but we're still talking about movies. This should be a fun episode. The first episode, I've got my guest, ONTL Showrunner. You know him from fandom teams. They show up in Warzone sometimes, all around the community. Adelaide Spence. Adelaide, how are you feeling tonight?
Oh, it's great. It's only been 2 days since I've had therapy. I got to be back. I do want to say, fun enough, weirdly enough, I think I'm more known as a Warzone player this year, given my my skills and lack thereof.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think of you as a fandom player, but no, you're not wrong. Warzone a little bit. It varies. But yeah, very excited to have you on this. For those, everyone just tuning in since this is our first episode, we're going to be going through 3 different questions. What movie character you see yourself in, a movie that reminds you of a personal experience, and a movie that gives you hope. But before we get into those 3 things, first, just for fun, Adelaide, what is your earliest memory of a movie that you remember watching?
Let me tell you about The Water Horse, a movie that no one remembers for a good reason, because it was fine. Nothing really. I know that. What's her name? Not Emily Watson is in it. That's basic. I think maybe Robert Redford as well. Some old dudes.
See, I remember. I don't think Robert Redford. I remember. I saw The Water Horse. I remember this movie. Really, what is so curious to me is like how late this movie came out. I think this movie came out in 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
that's
like,
interesting.
I always loved movies, and I know that like I have memories of like putting like VHSs and DVDs in and watching. Like I know I grew up on Disney, but I also just don't have a really solid memory of my childhood, and there's probably therapy reasons for that. But just like such a strong memory for me, because like in the finale of the movie, the titular water horse is getting shot at, like just getting blown the fuck up by like boats, and everyone's crying like, no, don't kill. I think his name's like Nessie or something stupid like that. And I was just like sobbing because I had such sensory overload. Probably was one of my first times at the movie theater, especially with all that blowing up. Like it just got to me, and I was just breaking down, and it was just so like loud. And that's basically it. And after that, it's like a big gap until like How to Train Your Dragon and Despicable Me.
That's interesting. You know, it's funny though. Those kind of like intense, maybe in a negative way, theater experiences do stick with us though. That is interesting because there is like, especially when you're a kid, there is like something like amazing about the theater, but also something a little bit terrifying about the theater. Like it's a dark room. So no, that absolutely makes sense. Well, we'll get into the first part of this show. A movie character you see yourself in now. Full disclosure for everyone at home, Adelaide Spence did tell me their answers to all 3 of these questions beforehand, so I would have time to watch the movies and kind of think about these, but they did not necessarily tell me why. So Adelaide Spence, go ahead. What is a movie character you see yourself in?
I think this is the one where I've like spoiled it the most, because on the YLS Top 100, go check that out, where I was on definitely the best version. Don't watch the other 3. This is I'll just say Perks of Being a Wallflower, my favorite film of all time, and I went into depth about why it's so special and why it means so much to me. Insofar as like I went out of my way to hang out with Kirk Kowalkowski. So I love Kirk, but I went to Pittsburgh, and something that we both talked about, and it was very, very important to me, was going through like the tunnel, listening to Heroes by David Bowie, and just taking in that experience, because I have never been more like mentally fucked up than the first few days after I watched that, because I saw so much of myself in Charlie. I every time I bring it up, I have to sort of clear the air of like I was never sexually assaulted, and that's a big part of the character. But when you separate that, you're removing that experience. He is so much of me, like down to like little things about his everyday life. I just fully just saw myself on camera. It's like the way he connected with his teachers, the specific relationships he had with his friends, the things that he liked, the things he went out and did. That was all me. All of that was me. And the fact that I was caught on camera, and as fucked it is to say, considering the movie is like not the happiest thing, and he went through some shit. I wished I had his life. I wished I could have been him, because it was so much happier and easier to be Charlie than myself. And I like a very like this is like a core memory of mine is going. My school didn't have a therapist; they had like an academic advisor. I'm like, oh, advising, like emotions. And I went to him and I just fucking like sobbed about I could never be him, and I'll never have that life that I thought was like my perfect ideal. And he just sat there like, it's not my job. I can't do anything for you. Go see a therapist. It's all I can do. And I never really processed that until a few years later, when I was showing someone who would later become like a very big partner of mine the movie, because they had never seen it. And I sat there, I was like, this destroyed me. But I've matured so much out of high school. Now I'm in college, and I saw that like I've seen it, I think, only twice. And because it emotionally like destroys me. But it's so special, and it is now my favorite film, because I think it's really important to have that introspection of not only who you could have been, but there's just something really special about seeing yourself, like a version of yourself on film, and living with the what ifs, but also seeing how someone can be happy with the shit sandwich they've been handed. When I've also been handed a kind of shit sandwich, and see how like this kid, if he can do it in high school, I can do it in life. Like I have so many more years to find that happiness that Charlie does, and I know that I can get there eventually.
So in terms of, it's just very interesting to me that So I kind of want to take two things in part. So the first kind of half of my question about this I have for you is, I guess I kind of want to know specifically, what is it about Charlie? Like what are the things that when you see Charlie, which for those watching, that's Logan Lerman's character, the main character of Purse. Like what are the things about Charlie that make you go, that is me? That is me.
I've always had like a really close relationship with teachers. As I've gotten older, I've had a better words are hard. I've made friends better. I've gone out and I've gotten close with people my age, but I used to have a really hard time with that. I would have like one or two friends and that's it. But teachers were always like this respite of like, I found someone who I can talk to about this specific subject that I love. He had his English teacher. I had a few of those. I had poetry teachers, and I always connected with them. And seeing him connect, I forget the teachers' names, but with Paul Rudd, and just like this growth, I think was really important, because I sort of saw myself as someone who was always trying to grow. And at this point, I had an older teacher who I spent a lot of time with, who sort of helped form this a little bit. And it was also just like, I had a Sam. Like I had someone who I looked up to as like my safety net in going to high school. And I eventually caught feelings for her, and I didn't know what to do about it. And it was just sort of sitting with that acknowledgement of like, she's a freshman, or she's a senior, I'm a freshman, and she's gone in a few months. And what do I do with that? And I never saw her again after she graduated. But I remember really clearly, like, our last interaction was just like this, partially longing, but also just happy for her. I just ran into her and her boyfriend as they were hanging out somewhere around school, and it was just like I'm always gonna have that spot in my head for her of just like the. I think it's actually because of the Charlotte connection of like knowing that she's my Sam. I'm always gonna have like that what could have been, but it was just happy to see like I don't need to, like she has a lot very bad history of mental health and parental abuse and everything. So seeing her be happy with her boyfriend, I like that was my letting go moment of like I am okay now. I can relax. Also like Rocky Horror. I think a big reason I love Rocky Horror is seeing Charlie do these shadow casts of like this idea of going out and bearing yourself and being your honest, true, whole self, doing the most insane things. And that's just, I think that's drawn me to a lot of my experiences in life.
So I guess then I have a second part of my question that I do want to get to, but your response kind of created another question in my mind, which is that would you say that you still like the person you are now is still very much like Charlie, or would you say that you were Charlie, but you aren't necessarily anymore?
I mean, I would like to imagine that Logan Lerman grows up, goes to a shitty college, and becomes like Charles or something, and goes by like he they pronouns, like gets wokeified or yossified. But like, I think it's hard to like. Granted, it's been oh my fucking god, it's been almost 10 years since I've seen this for the first time. No, no, that's not true. It's been I think closer to 8, but still, it's like it's been a while. But I haven't changed that radically of a person. Like we come of age in high school, like we change who we are. And while we're a very different person as we go through life, I am still like at that point where like I am changing a lot. It doesn't matter how Charlie changes. Because I started as Charlie, he's always going to be there in me. And I think it's just like I am different forms of Charlie. Like I am adapting. Like it's like it's evolution. It's like it's this fucking all these bacteria and everything just branched out differently. I am one of like the multiverses of Charlie, and I think that's just comforting to know. Like, actually, no, it's everything everywhere all at once. I'm sorry, I ramble a lot.
No, I'm really actually fascinated by this.
Yeah, it's like Michelle Yeoh of just like she is a cosmic disappointment. There are so many better things she could have been done, but now she's just average. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm the average self or someone who went off in a different direction. If I am like one of the better Michelle Yeohs, but it's like every universe has its own Charlie, and I think I am like in this one's, or at least I am a Charlie. And I think that's important for me to sit with. Of just like it doesn't matter how much I've changed, I've still had him there, and so much of him and who I was when I watched it inspire who I am today.
That's really interesting, and that kind of leads into the second half of my question about this, which is you kind of keep coming back to, and I don't want to, if you're not comfortable with this, I don't want to push on this.
Ahead.
But I really want to go back to that moment in which you said that when you see Charlie Logan Lerman in Perks of Being a Wallflower, you think to yourself, why couldn't have that been me? And I guess I kind of want you to, as much as you're comfortable, elaborate on that, because I think that's just a really fascinating reaction to that character in my opinion.
I think a big part of it, like I think it like it initially started as like, oh, I wish I had gotten to like kiss my Sam and be with her. Of like, and I don't think I've really felt like a really strong romantic connection with anyone for like a long time. High school was filled with really shitty relationships, The only good one I had literally just like it was the same thing, but she was a friend. Like it didn't go anywhere. And the fact that he had someone who could like love him so deeply, I never really got that. Whereas like I like kissing him is one thing, and I know that was romantic or not, whatever. It was still like she loved him so deeply, and he had like this older brother in Patrick who like had done his own shit and made his own mistakes, but still like had someone who was there for him. And I never really felt like I had a friend who was there for me like Sam or Patrick. And that is just so hard to sit with as like a kid who like I'm social, I go out and I know a lot of people, but I don't have someone who's there for me as deep as Charlie had them. And it was like, why couldn't that be me? Why couldn't I have my Sam? And just that's so hard to sit with. Like imagine sitting in front of like I don't know how like personal. Like imagine talking to like Eli and just telling him, hey, no one's gonna love you as much as a film character. Like you're gonna sit there and be unhappy and there's no one to love you the way you want to be loved. And that's so fucking hard to tell like a 16, 15-year-old you were never gonna be loved. And I know I found that eventually, but when you're in that moment, the wait is eternity.
You know, I think that is so fascinating, and I appreciate you for like sharing all this so much. And one thing that I think is really fascinating, right, is that you said that you really wanted a Patrick, for those watching Ezra Miller's character. You really wanted a Patrick in your life. And I guess what I would posit is that I find that you are an incredibly empathetic person. Like as someone who has known you for a long time, I think you are the type of person who truly exemplifies that you treat people the way you yourself would like to be treated. And I would posit that you, in a lot of ways, have kind of become other people's Patrick. You know, which is
a gay disaster.
I don't mean that.
I know. It's just funny.
No, but I would posit that you are kind of this very kind of welcoming person. Like think about all kind of the new people in terms of this community that you kind of welcome in. But I think just in general, even removed from this community, I just see you as a person who is just inclusive, for lack of a better word. And I think that, and that was one of the elements of Patrick that you really described. And I just think that's really fascinating that because you resonate so much with Charlie, you've kind of become a Patrick. And I think that's really interesting in a sense.
Well, I think it makes sense for like I think if it comes down to like especially with depression, but in life in general, I think if you're like, let's say you're missing X, like X is like the value. There's two directions I think most people go in. It's that they resent they never had X and now they are entirely against it. Where it's like I've never like if I go in that other direction, if I Robert Frost this shit, I end up so like I hate people. I hate these new connections. And it's like if I don't like if it's just or no, it's not that. It's shallow. If I go in the other direction, I am shallow and I meet people and I don't connect with them at all because if the group that I wanted to be with couldn't connect with me that way, I'll never let anyone even have a chance at that. And then I took the other path of I can't imagine someone feeling the way I did. I need to try and prevent that. And like, and again, like we've been like really close for 4.5, almost 5 years. Like we are bonded through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And like I'm very upfront about like how I care about how I feel about everyone. I take time sometimes if I know that like, hey, shit's not going well. People say like, hey, is everything okay? Are you good? I'll just say the mall in Iowa is like a moment for you I know about. Where it's checking in of just like, hey, is everything all right? Because I know that like especially I'm not a man. If this goes beyond this community, even if you don't know, I'm not a man. But I think a big thing about like masculine or male relationships is like this emotional connection is not talked about a lot. And I want to break that down of just letting people know that like they can share their emotions and connect and bond. And it's not just getting sloppy drunk at 2 a.m. at like a fucking what's the word? Like at like a really bad bar playing like Daughtry or whatever. Like, oh, I love you. It's like that's not the time. You always have to communicate and let people know that you want to be in their lives. Because it's so hard. Again, being in there, it's so hard to never know if people want to be there or if they feel trapped in that relationship.
That is like genuinely really profound.
If it's any help, I've gone to therapy for most of my life, so I end up being very introspective. Like the first thing I do when I go in is just like, I should say, legitimately, I went to therapy for, I think, I'm sorry, I'm going to do the math here. I think it was like second to fourth grade, 6th to 8th, and then 10th, basically consistently until I dropped out of college. So most of my life I've been in therapy. I'm very used to these techniques, and I'm very good at like isolating how I'm feeling and explaining it. Because this is not a good place.
Well, I would agree completely that you have been excellent so far in explaining a lot of this stuff. And that I want to move on to our next question, which is a movie. Oh, did you have anything else to add about Third?
Oh no, this is a fun transition.
Oh, okay. A movie that reminds you of a personal experience. You're allowed to interpret that any way you would like, but what is this movie that reminds you of a personal experience?
So, for those who haven't seen A Monster Calls, it is a movie about a kid whose mom has cancer. And the whole thing of the movie is he can't handle the idea of death. And one of my I think of everything in like inside out ways of just like core memories of like this forms me as a person. The same partner who I mentioned earlier with Perks of Being a Wallflower. They were going on a trip to Utah and we're like, I need a book to read on the bus. Like, okay. And I give them A Monster Calls. So not the movie, but the same thing. And almost immediately when they get back, they just sort of like sit me down and hand me back the book and basically say, like, I don't know how long we'll be together, but I want to thank you for changing my life because I have been too comfortable with death where I don't care about my life a lot. And if I lose it, I lose it. Nothing wrong. And then I read this book. And I have finally learned that death is not something that only affects me. And it's so hard to sit with the idea of hurting everyone around me by just taking my life. And so I need you to know how important this book is to me. And that was just a really special moment because again, I relish deep human connection. And then having that, I was just like, here's a book. I love it. I love the movie. But taking like this life lesson from like that, I didn't even think about that. To me, the whole story of the movie was not being selfish, but the whole thing ends with the kid saying, like, telling the mom, like, I wish you would die because I can't see you in pain. And it's not like, oh, I want you off this earth. It's just, I see how much pain you're in and it's never going to get better. You are going to die eventually. Please die now because seeing you in pain hurts us both so much. And that's what I got. And so having them take that all in, an entirely new perspective was so like world shattering to me in the best way possible.
So I just want to make sure I understand the context of this.
Mhm.
So was this person who you gave the book to? What was your connection to them?
We were dating at the time.
Oh, okay. So this is
Yeah.
someone you were dating at the time. So had you already seen the movie at this point, or was this before?
Yeah, I saw this in theaters. Weird experience. But I'd seen it twice, and I bought the book because I love I love the way the art is in the movie of when Liam Neeson, granddad tree kind of guy, is telling these stories to the kid, how it's beautifully animated. And I heard from, honestly, it wasn't Holton. I didn't know him then. I heard from someone, like, hey, the book also has these images. Oh, I want to see it. So I bought it and I loved it. So I shared it.
Well, now that I kind of have the context of that, I think that is that I guess my first question I have for you is like, what was your reaction like to hearing that? Because I feel like that would be kind of overwhelming to hear someone tell you that.
I mean, we just talked about it in like the perks segment, where it's like, I love that. I love this deep human connection, and like literally in everything but someone telling me you have changed my life, and knowing that I am so meaningful to someone is like so helpful. But this is also like, this is to me, like, this person, they were the first. I always describe them as, this was the first relationship where I described breaking up as an if not a win. Because in high school, I knew everything was temporary, and while I did care about them a lot, I knew that it wouldn't last. This person, I thought it was an if. I thought maybe we were together forever because it was just such like a deep connection. Obviously, it's not. We broke up like a few months after this interaction, but it's just so special to me having a person that you can definably say changed your life for the better.
So, yeah, I think that is so profound that essentially it was the books or the film's impact of saying that, death is so painful, correct? That was essentially, what kind of had an impact on them.
I think there's like a certain thing that we like. I think us as a community. I don't know if this is like an everyone thing or a movie trivia community kind of thing, but it's still like, I think the show, whatever. I think our community needs some introspection sometimes of like, not everyone watches a fuck ton of movies. Like this person I'm dating, like they like a few. Our first date was watching Tangerine, which like, that's a weird fucking date movie, but it's like they would never have seen that without me. And I think that's something to take into account. Like, people watch some weird shit, but oftentimes they don't watch a lot. So basically being confronted with this dour story. And I know some people who like don't love the movie because they're like, it's a little like, it's fine, but nothing we haven't tackled before. This person I was dating, like, they've never seen anything like it. And I think that's, at least to me, I think that was a big moment for me of like, art is allowed to be repetitive because you don't know what the first time someone experiencing these things. This is why in every single fucking Warzone match, you say the rules because you never know what's the first one someone's watching. I think it's so important to keep putting these themes and ideas in movies because you never know when someone will first stumble across it. I think A Monster Calls is more like touted for its imagery and the way that it sort of conveys these messages through stories. But if it was flat out just this kid dealing with his mom's death, I think it would have had, like, that is the impact that it had on my partner, of just understanding how hard death is. You don't have to fucking watch $1 Million Baby to do it. That could work. But A Monster Calls exists to hone in on those themes. And I think it's so special that it was able to do that and change. Like this is a total sidebar.
Go ahead.
I think it's amazing how every single movie in existence could theoretically be someone's favorite film. I just sit there and like sometimes I'm watching a movie and my mind wanders off just like, what kind of person is this their favorite movie? And the idea of how every movie impacts someone differently. And I think this movie is like a perfect example of that, of like, this is one of my favorite films. I love it and I've watched it too many times, probably when I'm in therapy. And I never approached it from that perspective. And this person, on their first like interpretation of the story, an entirely different path, and that changed their life. That's insane.
That is incredibly fascinating. I completely agree with you, because I think personally, I don't really think of that as being like one of the top 5 themes that I get from that movie. Like, to me, the movie is about, contradictions and dealing with guilt, and 'cause that's the whole emotional catharsis, is the kid realizing that, the guilt that he was feeling for his mother, but within that guilt there's the pain of death. And I think that is so fascinating, that something that you and I would both consider not a theme of the movie would impact someone so much. Are you still in contact with this person?
Oh, that was a real fucking messy breakup. It did not go well. But it's again, it's still like they hold such a spot in my life, because not only did like I think we changed each other's lives just in very different ways, but it's like there's always going to be that connection of like such a special relationship that was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has just been an incredibly fascinating discussion. I will say though, I'm happy that even though these have both been, at least the second one has kind of been a lighter note. I do want to go for kind of a, if not lighter, at least a hopeful note with this third question. Not that you have to be hopeful. I'm saying that that's the.
I'm allowed to be depressed. Damn it,
no, please. I'm saying that was the design of the third question. Was we would end with something, even if you still, please feel free to talk about non-hopeful things, but at least something that gives you hope. And so please go ahead with a movie that gives you hope.
I'll just twist this around and just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna change the movie on it to make me more sad.
My pick is The Green Mile.
Man, I love Sam Rockwell and that so much. I mentioned before, this is not a man. This is not close to a man. So I picked something gay. I think there's just something so special about having like queer representation in a film, and it's not like this big thing. I was like, one of my favorite things in the MCU is in Spider-Man Far From Home. One of the actors is trans. No one, like, it's never talked about. The person literally has fucking like 2 lines. Not a problem. Hired a trans actor? Why the fuck not? Because you can, because they're fucking people. And I love it. But Booksmart is so in your face gay. And that is so fucking good. And it's like beyond the fact that the movie is just like ungodly funny. It's jokes on jokes on jokes and so many different types of humor, so many different types of jokes. I think there's some, and also, don't get me wrong, I love Brokeback Mountain. I'm tired of seeing sad gay movies. They do more happy gay movies. Because, oh my God, I'm gay and I fucking die. If that is part of your movie, don't make the fucking movie. Like, it's like queer stories are so intrinsically linked to heartbreak that's a little fucking obnoxious. That's all that's made. So you make Booksmart, which is just gay and fun and happy, and the one moment of sad is the only like mediocre part of the film. And that's honestly more because it wasn't directed really well, and like I get it in like fucking writing constructs, because that's how fucking screenplays are made. But it's just so good to see gay joy. Like, yes, please accidentally play lesbian porn on a Bluetooth speaker in a car with your principal. That's comedy. fuck a model in a bathroom, because why the fuck not? Like, it's like this movie is just so filled with joy, and I think that's special to like see on screen. On top of just the best possible cast for Fred from Scooby Doo. I forget the actor's fucking name, but the dude that Beanie Feldstein wants to hook up with is a perfect Fred. I've seen him in the Blue Ascot. It's perfect. I need him to play Fred.
Well, yeah, no, I was kind of curious when you sent me Booksmart, what exactly the direction was, and frankly, I should have expected this. But no, I think that's really fascinating. So, in a sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, this gives you hope, as in, it is a picture of acceptance without melancholy.
Well, I think it's more. I think I viewed this a little bit more of like hope for the future of film, because I think it's like this is a weird thing to say, because it sort of like just says fuck you to your question, but I don't think that like a film can give me hope unless it's like a documentary, and I'll be honest, don't love those. I'm just like, I don't think that a story about someone else's experience can make me be like, oh yeah, life is better. Like, it could be better. Like, that's just not like how my brain works. It's just like, oh, that was a fun time for however long that was, or I'm gonna feel worse. Like, it's weird to like, my mood can be picked up, but it's not like, oh, I'm better for the future. That's not intuitive for me. So I just sort of saw it as, I think, I'm gonna spill some fucking tea. Give me a minute. I think there's something really special about creating queer representation, because, not to suck my own dick, when I was in Cannes a few months ago, I met a film producer who I didn't know until later. He had produced an anti-Roe v. Wade film starring Jon Voight. Bad dude. But he sat me down and asked, like, what is your purpose in film? Like, what do you want to do? And I tell him, oh, I want to create more queer stories, and I want to put more queer voices in front of and behind the camera, because that's so important to have a lot of representation. And he's like, stop. There are so many queer people behind the scenes. You don't need them in front of the camera. They're all producers. That's good enough. And he wanted to just like focus on telling good stories and not queer ones, which I understand. But when you are actively intervening from telling queer stories, that's not going to do anything. If you're telling me that you don't want gay actors or gay writers or anything, and you're fine with just, executives whose names float around and get an Oscar nomination and that's it, that's not good representation. I need to see someone like proudly say, like, I am gay, I am trans. I need something. Because like, when you see all these conservatives on like Twitter and shit basically saying like, why are so many more queer people there nowadays? Because on fucking Twitter and TikTok and everything, they're being like fucking hypnotized by the gays. Like, that's not true. I think that I think this also might go into why Charlie hit me so much, of just like, I was a lot more depressed before I came out, where it was like, that self-hatred was so much stronger and louder because I hated myself. And when I finally realized that, like, I hated myself because that's not who I was, like, I hated forcing myself into that box, that's where it all broke for me. And I think that that's so important for queer people to see, of like, here's why you're not happy, and here's a version of you who can be. And I think people need to use their platforms to elevate their voices, of like, there's so many people who are the same type of person, just going on saying the same type of things. We need to elevate unique people, and we need to go out of our way to say, hey, here is a story that hasn't been told, a person who we haven't seen before, and you could be them. And that's what Booksmart is to me. Of like, there are so many proud queer characters that just passively exist. Like, it's not a big thing that Caitlin Deaver's gay. It's just, oh, hey, here's this hot student and she's pining after her. And that's the whole story of it's not like her coming out to her parents. Her fucking friends think that her and Beanie Feldstein are dating. And they're fine with it. They're happy. Fucking Phoebe and Will Arnett, queer allies. Like, it's fun. It's happy. And we need that. And fuck you, Agnew, for telling me that queer voices can't be found like go fuck yourself. And I hate that you just sat there and looked at me and told me that your voice doesn't matter. And you make a fucking anti-Roe v. Wade film. How are you in fucking Hollywood? Bitch. I have his business card too. I should burn it just for dramatics.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's interesting to me though that really what necessarily is what gives you hope, if I'm understanding you correctly, isn't necessarily inside of the world of the film itself, but the idea of the film itself.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
That's fascinating to me, but at the same time, I do think that you posited that the seeing the film, the characters, be so happy and everything kind of not being a big deal, even though you might not necessarily see it as a realistic future. It's an idea of a positive future, and that in and of itself is positive for you. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I honed in on the word realistic just because I think that like it's like this is what it could be. And I think we're close. I have so many circles of friends where I can like passively mention queer things to, and it's not even blinked at. But I have other situations like this is a weird TMI story. Okay. At work the other day, I was just going to the bathroom and I just heard like two dudes just fucking in a stall. And I'm like, wow, that's strange. And I told my coworkers, because like, why are people fucking in a stall at a bathroom in a hotel? That's the weird thing. And I tell them, and they're like, two dudes? Whoa. And that's not like, it's such like a passive thing of queer being the outlier. And that's like the trigger you pull of the first thing you go to is like, oh, what's strange? It's this. And I've noticed it a lot more, less in modern films just because of, again, voices working behind the scenes and everything. But it's a thing I see a lot more in older films as well. Just like a lot of the times the butt of the joke is being queer. Or again, this idea of queer sadness of if you make a queer story, it has to end in death or tragedy. And the more I hone in on it, the more I realize of just like, there's a reason that gay people have like been so happy or so much more functioning recently of seeing themselves on screen in a way that doesn't make them fucking depressed. Like we're happy now. And that's so important to see and share.
Well, that is a really insightful take, and I think throughout this whole discussion, you have just, like you said, you've been incredibly insightful and introspective, and I've really appreciated everything you had to say. Did you have something else to add?
Oh, I was going to say, the only happy queer representation in the past 50 years is musicals. Go watch more musicals.
That is fair. Watch more.
If you want to see gay people happy, go to a live screening of Mamma Mia. That's where you see joy.
Well, Adelaide, I just want to thank you so much again. I think this was such an incredible and fascinating and insightful discussion. Before we go, do you have any final thoughts or anything to plug or anything of that nature?
Go watch Opening Night Trivia. I put a lot of my time into that. But also, I don't know when the next episode of this show is. But everyone watching, if you made it this far, which if you did, fucking sorry, I'll send you $20 for therapist fee. Sign up because it's honestly really relaxing. And this is me as someone who's like very easy being vulnerable. but I think it's a special thing to be able to connect with someone, especially like who you know, because you all know Boatman. He's great. He's nice. I put that poster behind him. I think ask him to sign up because it's a very relieving 45 minutes to just sit here and talk about how you're feeling with someone who genuinely wants to listen. And you need to take that opportunity.
Well, I thank you so much.
Yeah, disagree with that, fucker. See what it's trying to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you for being on this show in general. This was, I was so happy we ended up being able to do this because I had been wanting to do this show for like the longest time.
It's been like 2 months, like 2.5 months since we asked.
But in terms of ideas that I have, I have a lot of ideas that I go for and they don't always pan out. And I'm happy I actually kept on this one because this was such an incredible discussion. So thank you to everyone for watching. As Spence said, if you want to be on the show, shoot me a message because I think this is a really interesting time. So if you want to be on the show, let me know. Thank you to Video Store for hosting this. Buy their stuff. Come on Multiplex. I host Multiplex Entertainment. Be sure to check that out for all your trivia needs. Thank you, everyone, for watching. See you later.